Doug Ritter from Knife Rights joins us on the program right now. Doug, great to have you on the program, sir.
Always a pleasure, Cam. Always a pleasure.
Well, listen, you're hitting the big time when the anti-gun publications and the anti-gun authors decide to become anti-knife authors as well, and to turn their attention to kniferights.org. Mother Jones has gone after the NRA for years and years, but now they're writing about you, Doug. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm honored. You have no idea.
Now, all right. So let's talk about the piece that that they wrote about knife rights. What was their take here? Were they just kind of talking about the issue in general?
We got a call from their reporter, which was an interesting moment in time. Hi, I'm from Mother Jones, and we're writing an article about knife rights. Okay. And it really is an overview, and not a bad one, all things considered, considering the source, of what the issues are and what Knife Rights is trying to do in fighting the Second Front in the defense of our Second Amendment and standing up to New York City. So it actually, it came out okay. It came out pretty good when you consider it. And when you consider who reads Mother Jones,
right,
it might actually bring us some members, because a lot of them do carry knives, even though they hate guns. Go figure.
Go figure. It's really funny, Doug, that we see this. The almost the same template applied to again the knife rights from the opposing side. The knife extremists. Did you get called the knife lobby?
We haven't been called a knife lobby yet here, though we have elsewhere. I thought the illustration that they chose for the article was pretty funny. A bunch of people walking down the street and coming out of stores with swords and all kinds of knives, and a juggler juggling knives, and it's like, really? That's not reality, folks. But that's how they view this. It's such a black and white sort of thing to them, that we were fascinated that despite their clear prejudice,
right,
the article was relatively even-handed, which I guess is testament to the fact that our rational arguments made some impact, which is amazing when you think about it.
Well, it's interesting, Doug. I don't think that the right to keep and bear arms, and I've said this on many occasions, is a right for conservatives or a right for Republicans. It is a right of all Americans. And I think, at the end of the day, I think it's great that you think that Mother Jones ultimately did a decent job covering the issue, and you may get new members because these, our rights are our rights as Americans. And this should be a nonpartisan issue. This should be one of those issues where, we may disagree on fiscal policy, we can disagree on all kinds of things, but when it comes to our rights, we all stand together. I think that's great.
Well, and one of the questions I got repeatedly, both from the original writer for the article, and their fact checker later on, was the issue of, well, are all your members NRA members? And it's like, well, we certainly have a large percentage of NRA members,
right?
But not at all. I mean, we have a significant minority of members who don't own guns, who are hikers and campers and boaters and environmentalists, and this is not a red-blue issue. This is about a right and a tool that Americans of all stripes carry and use every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that actually struck home, because I bet when they went back to their offices and talked to some people, there were quite a few people in that office who had a pocket knife in their pocket.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right. And you know, it's interesting. Mother Jones ended this piece with your quote, and let me just read it in full because, as you say, it's kind of surprising that they didn't include a line or two of snark afterwards. Quote: "Weapons don't kill people. People kill people. A screwdriver makes an excellent weapon if you want to use it that way. So does a baseball bat or a claw hammer," Ritter said, finishing his lunch and putting down his fork and knife. "It's irrational to believe that if you ban certain types of knives, criminals will somehow stop being criminals." And that's how the piece ends.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought it was pretty strong. For especially, and I don't know if you noticed, but this piece ran on page 12 and page 14. And page 13 was one of the most biased anti-gun diatribes about mass killings and guns. And I mean, the contrast could not have been more stark. I mean, it was amazing. You know, they bookended this anti-gun piece with a knife piece that, while, yes, they were a bit snarky in their headlines and some of their writing and their prejudice shows through, but that was really, in the end, a pretty even-handed discussion of the issue.
You know, it's funny. I think you're right. I mean, there's a piece. Let me just quote a couple of bits here. The Mother Jones article says, "It might be a mistake to characterize the organization simply as a side project for gun nuts. Knife Rights Board also includes outdoorsman, knife designer, kitchen despot, and joy of cooking heir Ethan Becker. Quote, a significant minority of our members are hikers, backpackers, climbers, kayakers, environmentalists," Ritter said. "It's not a left-right, red-blue issue." You know, I wonder, Doug, if the author of that really overblown piece about guns in Mother Jones, if that author was aware that gun ownership, too, is not a left-right, red-blue issue, that there are liberals, there are progressive gun owners out there, there are people who are independent who are gun owners as well, and that, again, it's this, if they just had that attitude, but it almost seems like it's because it's the gun, there's the block. They see knives as kind of okay, maybe okay.
I think there is a great deal of truth to the issue of guns are so highly emotionally charged that the mere mention of them to, for example, the author of this other article,
right,
is just, they cannot see beyond the fact that they hate guns.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas knives are more likely, I mean, people use knives every day at home,
right,
let alone at work or play or wherever. And when we go talk to politicians, when we're trying to do legislation, it's much easier to, the folks on the right are not an issue, and the folks on the far left are always going to be an issue. But the folks in the middle, oftentimes to the left of center, are open to rational discussion because they don't have this visceral emotional reaction to knives that they have towards guns.
Do you see that, Doug, as an opportunity then once, like almost as a, I realize that, as the chairman of kniferights.org, how these folks ultimately come to feel about firearms is probably not your driving focus, but do you see this attitude change once folks start exploring their right to keep and bear arms via knives?
I do, and one of the things that we see happening when we meet people and talk to them, particularly at knife shows, is that they become a member of Knife Rights, and suddenly the Second Amendment, which they may have never really considered their own or really considered at all, other than they didn't like guns, suddenly the Second Amendment becomes important to us because that's ultimately the right upon which our knives rest. And I think that one of the things that we do for the Second Amendment community is bring in folks who have not been Second Amendment advocates, who may have been Second Amendment opponents in many cases, or if not that, at least ambivalent, and turn them into Second Amendment advocates, because now it means something to them. It's protecting the tools that they think a lot of. So I think that's a tremendous complementary effect that we have as we bring more and more folks into the movement who just had never considered the Second Amendment their own, and now do.
Talking with Doug Ritter from kniferights.org. And, Doug, one of the things that Mother Jones talked about was the knife laws there in New York City. What's the latest on your challenge to the DA's policy and what we're seeing there in the Big Apple?
Well, there are a couple things that have happened recently. One is that the judge ruled that we were going to be able to add a plaintiff, Native Leather, who was one of the stores, the retailers that was victimized by the district attorney in last year. So that's a great asset to our case now that we have one of the retailers on board as a plaintiff. Mm-hmm. The district court judge also refused to admit their motions to dismiss. So those went away, which basically means eventually we're really going to go to trial. Now, that's not to say that the DA and the city won't file more motions and we won't have a whole lot more rigmarole to go through. But the judge looked at the facts and said, these folks have a rational reason to be suing you. So get on with it. And that's huge for us. I mean, and it's occurred in 13 months since the beginning, which seems like forever to me, but our attorneys assure me is lightning speed in federal court. So we're quite optimistic.
Well, all right then. That's good to hear. Hey, listen, Doug, I'm glad you could join us on the program tonight, sir. It's good catching up with you, and who knows, maybe, let's see, today was Mother Jones. Maybe next week it'll be the nation.
We'll take it. We'll take it. Thank you, Cam.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate the opportunity.